Alright guys, what's going on? Going on after a pretty great weekend here. Scoring some points in the last race. And yeah. We got P6 for the Belgian Grand Prix, and it was pretty good. But we're not quite up there for podiums yet. We had provisional podium and we lost it. I don't remember if it was the last race or the race before that. But yeah, I spoke a little too soon when it comes to taking the grid penalties early on, because our ICE and our turbocharger are past 70%, and by the time they get to the actual race, they'll be probably up towards 80% during the race, and jeopardy of DNFing. And we don't want to have that happen again, as we did at Monaco. So, yeah. But, feeling pretty good. We did just get an update that, we had some upgrades for Aero, I see. But, we also had some upgrades or not upgrades, we had some regulation changes at the end of the season, and we're on the second to last race. So, our jeopardy of losing parts for our aero and chassis departments, which are basically covering most of our upgrades that we have this season. So we have to fork over so much. But what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be putting our money into the major parts. So let's see, we have 9 parts at risk here for chassis, and then another 9 here for aero. So we're going to be losing quite a bit of these guys, as we're going to be trying to save some of these major parts here. And those major parts being some of the more expensive ones. So we're going to have to think about what we want to save here, as it will definitely change up the grid order, possibly, for the next season. And go from there. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into practice, decide on what parts we want to save for the next season for those performance upgrades that are regulation change, and we'll go from there. We'll see you guys at the end of practice, at the beginning of qualifying, for a quick update on what we did. Alright guys, real quick update before we go into qualifying. Practice felt really good, and we did a little bit of thinking here, and we're prioritizing over our major components here for this regulation change going into the next season. So under aerodynamics, we're going to be going for the over wheel winglets, even though they are not a major component. It is a little bit more expensive than the front nose, and that'll help with the downforce of the car. Not really much else. We're going to save a couple more credits after the race or so and go for the suspension. We'll go for that. And then for chassis, we're going to be going for the engine cover, the Monaco Q structure, it's the main body of the car, and then the heat dispersing wheel rims. I thought about waiting for credits for the plank and the engine cover, but they are not guaranteed to come in at 100%. So if they do end up coming in, we'll have to try to spare some points for those. But if they don't come in, we're not going to struggle with them for the end of the season, because we are going through that. So it's basically a waste of credits if we try to get it again and then have to go through the changeover and waste those points on them again the next season. So we're going to go ahead and wait on those and see what happens after this episode, and see if they come in. And nothing for powertrain and nothing for durability. So the powertrain stays the same. So we're definitely going to probably go for powertrain within the next season, or I'm probably going to try to split it between aero and chassis because we are doing pretty good for powertrain and durability. So let's get into qualifying. All right, so the end of Q1, we run on a single set of tires. We do a double lap run. We ended up with a 1:22.397. So pretty good on our time frame here. Charles Leclerc starting out in Q1 with a 1:21.6. So a lot of time to gain here for a lot of people, as Dan Ticktum gets knocked out of Q1, landing a 1:22.9. And a lot of gap there for the final 6 here. And we know that we have that penalty coming, so we're basically going to sit out of Q2, take the P16 start, because we know we're going to get slotted into the back of back of the grid in P22 from basically anywhere else except for P1, which will slot us into P21, where Dan Ticktum is currently. So we'll see you guys out on the track.
It's time for the Italian Grand Prix once again, here at the beloved and iconic Autodromo Nazionale di Monza. With the lowest downforce and drag of any circuit in the season, expect to see drivers making the most of the slipstream effect here today. With top speeds up to 215 and an average lap speed of around 155 miles per hour, Monza's reputation as one of the fastest circuits in the sport is well earned. We have 11 corners on this 3.6 mile track, with the best overtaking chance coming into the heavy braking zone of the Turn 1 chicane. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks like for today's race. Sergio Perez will lead us away from pole position, with Charles Leclerc alongside. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Sainz, Hamilton, Max Verstappen. They'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. And Bottas, Magnussen, Russell, Norris, and Lance Stroll. Fernando Alonso, Tsunoda, Sebastian Vettel, and Mick Schumacher. They've taken a grid penalty. Albon, Joe, Nicholas Latifi, and Daniel Ticktum. Johnson, they'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. Ricciardo, Ocon, and Pierre Gasly picks up the final grid slot. It's almost time for the lights to go out, so let's head down to the track where preparations are underway. Anthony Davidson joins me once again in the commentary box, and it's fantastic to have you with us here, but I'm curious, as a man with experience out on the track, how do you stop those pre-race nerves from becoming overwhelming when you're lining up on the grid?
Well, I imagine they'll be starting to feel the adrenaline as they anticipate the run down into Turn 1, a bit like preparing to go into battle. The unknown situation will bring nerves, but that's a good thing. It will keep them focused on the moment and on their surroundings as we build towards the start of the Grand Prix.
After the points finished last race, let's aim to keep that momentum going.
All right, so after sitting out of P2 and taking P16, knowing that we had penalties, we're actually starting in 19th behind Daniel Ticktum, so we're going to be side by side with him. And it looks like they want us to be doing a medium to hard, which we will be doing. So there's definitely no problem with that. So let's go ahead and knock our fuel down a bit. We might get some yellow flags, so we have to be careful about it. But we're gonna go ahead and stick with what we do with our fuel load, and let's get right to the race. Alright, so here we are on our 5 red lights, and we are off. A pretty decent start as we try to make a position on Dan Tipton, and Mississippi still holding on to the outside. Daniel Ricciardo making an easy move on the right side of us as we try to move to the inside lane for turn 1, and we get as far up as possible and slow down. A little bit of contact there between myself and Joe Granu as we round out turn 2 on this first lap here, as you can see Daniel Ricciardo was here in the mirror trying to hold off Nick Schumacher in the back. Not really any other grid changes here, but Dan Tickton making another position on Lance Stroll, moving him up to P12 behind Fernando Alonso. As you can see there, Dan Tickton, Lance Stroll, Yuki Tsunoda, as we're trying to stay in that racing line and figure out when it's best possible to try to make a move on Yuki Tsunoda, as we're already coming up here to the last chicane of the track. A little bit late on the brakes here as Lance Stroll is overtaken by Yuki Tsunoda here, and Yuki Tsunoda has a pretty decent gap behind Dan Tickton, so Dan Tickton has the pace that it seems like for this race, as we try to find that pace as well. Coming around the last few corners of the track here, rounding out lap 1, and we made the move on Joe Granu, and now we're trying to make a position on Lance Stroll, but as we're rounding out lap 1, start of lap 2, we have Alexander Albon. He hits the brakes late. His Nicholas Latifi was on the inside and forces him into the back of Pierre Gasly, so he ends up losing his front wing. Esteban Ocon there passes him, and Albon has to retire the car. Moving on to lap 5 now, we're on to the onboard with Sergio Perez, the race leader, and Sergio Perez has to retire the car due to a engine failure, where Albon's DNF was more of a terminal damage situation. So first 5 laps of the race, and we already have 2 DNFs. Moving on to lap 6, we're trying to make a position on our teammate of Dan Tickton as we're rounding up the end of lap 6. We have the DRS, and we do make that position on Dan Tickton. You can see that we're trying to be very careful around these first few corners, trying not to come in contact with Dan Tickton because he is our teammate. We're trying to get both of us up into the top 10 for points for this race as we're coming up towards the halfway point of the race here. I have a little bit of a gap on our teammate Dan Tickton as we try to make a move on Yuki Tsunoda, but coming around and starting the lap 13, we have the DRS and we try to make a move as we have some front runners going into the pits, and a lot of grid changes actually here on P13 or lap 13, sorry, as we do make that position on Yuki Tsunoda. And I was so in tune with this fight against Tsunoda that I didn't realize that we were P4 on lap 13, especially when we needed to come in for our pit stop at the end of this lap. So we have our side-by-side with Yuki Tsunoda, Dan Tickton close behind, trying to hold position with us, as he's still going to hold out another lap here, trying to do the overcut. But yeah, Lando Norris going into the pits here, and myself and Yuki Tsunoda follows me into the pits, as Dan Tickton stays out and has provisional pole. It's his first lap that he's ever led in a race so far this season. So quick change over to the hards. We do end up coming out in front of Yuki Tsunoda, and that's going to be rounding out the end of lap 13 and start of lap 14. Now we're going to move on to the leader of Dan Tickton with actually trying to defend a position against Charles Leclerc here. And if you can see in the mirror on the left side, Lewis Hamilton also making the outside lane move against Daniel Tickton for P2, as they were going to take those positions anyways because Daniel Tickton is coming in for his set of hard tires. And as he comes in, we're coming around these last few corners, and Daniel Tickton actually comes out. He was supposed to come out right behind us, but he ended up losing 2 positions to Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki Tsunoda here. As you can see, or you can hear us driving by. I myself drive by, and as he comes out, he still has to follow that wide line rule, as Yuki Tsunoda and Daniel Ricciardo make the pass on him before turn 1. And that's going to be the start of lap 15 here. And at the start of lap 15, we see a big 2.5 second gap between us and Fernando Alonso. Moving on to lap 16, just under 2 laps for us to catch up to him. So we try to make a move. He defends on the inside line, and we lose a little bit of momentum there. But we still keep that DRS as we contemplating braking late on this turn, but we're already over halfway. We got about 11 laps left, so we hit the brakes as late as possible. A little bit of contact on Alonso there, and then he ends up going into the Alfa Romeo of Valtteri Bottas and losing his entire front wing. So he's basically going to be coming into the pits at the end of this lap for a new front wing. So no warning for that, and I checked the log. There was no warning for anybody in that confrontation about the contact and him losing the front wing. So it was very unlucky for Fernando Alonso, as we're moving on to lap 20, and we finally caught up to Valtteri Bottas, trying to regain P8. As we try to force him on the inside, take the outside line, as we end up coming into turn 1 side by side here. Just about. We do manage to get in front of him as we solidify P8, but he does have the momentum on us, as there is our side-by-side coming around turn 2 and 3, or 3 and 4, sorry about that. But a pretty good fight between myself and Valtteri Bottas throughout the rest of this race. As we come through the first chicane, we have in front of him no DRS, but he does have the slipstream on us as we're coming around these corners. Very hard to come around these 2 corners, as I'm not hitting the brakes at all. You can see the rear end coming out a little bit, and now we are hitting the DRS of Valtteri Bottas just over a second, but he still does get that DRS. As we come up to the other chicane, we cut the corner pretty well, and we actually ran it out pretty well in defending against Valtteri Bottas. So we're basically going to be rounding out the end of this race in front of Valtteri Bottas and securing P8 for our race here in race 9. So one more race to go.
Okay, pick up rubber and bring it home.
Great effort there from Ferrari to take the victory today. Talk to me, Ants. What was it that set them apart from the competition today?
I think it was clear what the main contributing factor out on track was: speed. I know it sounds like an awfully reductive statement, but fast cars win races, and we saw that today with our winner.
Looking Looking at the podium, you can see that red suit familiar to fans across the globe. A world-class win for a world-class team. Ferrari, do it again.
All right, a little bit of video lag here as we try to get our screen up and running. Yeah, so we're still sitting in P11 for our driver standings, and then Unity still solidifies their position in P7 in the constructor standings. Alfa Romeo scoring more points to out Aston Martin P8 for the constructor standings. Looks like Max Verstappen makes a move up to P2, and Carlos Sainz makes it up to P3 for the driver standings. And a very good race. We started in P19 after those final penalties, and we had a very good race against Valtteri Bottas. We tried to keep up with Dan Ticktum there. We raced with him for a few laps, and try to keep him in tow, that way he can get some momentum, because there was an opportunity where we could both get in the points range. But after the pit stops and after he came out, he lost 2 positions against the McLaren and I believe an AlphaTauri. He started backing off, so it's very unfortunate that he wasn't able to keep up with us. But yeah, 2 DNFs coming from Alexander Albon and Sergio Perez, and making our way up the grid to P8 to score a little bit more points. 4 more points for our driver standings. So that's going to be it for the Italian Grand Prix, and we will see you guys in the next video for Abu Dhabi as we finish out this first 10 race season. We'll see you guys in the next video.